The 1960s are often remembered as an era of peace, love, and unprecedented musical innovation. But behind the catchy melodies and the glowing gold records lies a much more sinister reality. What if I told you that some of the greatest songs of that decade carried a dark energy, leaving a trail of unexplainable tragedies, misfortune, and absolute disaster for the artists who dared to bring them into the world? Today, we are going to dive deep behind the scenes of music history to uncover secrets that the industry has tried its best to forget. If you are fascinated by the unresolved mysteries of rock and roll, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel right now, because we are about to explore 10 cursed 1960s hits that brought terrible luck to everyone involved. Brace yourself, because the story behind our first song will make you question whether fate can truly be written into a lyric. Number 10. Dead Man's Curve, Jan and Dean. Released in 1964, this upbeat, catchy track told the fictional tale of a dangerous drag race ending in disaster on an infamous sharp curve in Los Angeles. It was a massive, roaring success, perfectly capturing the vibrant car culture of the era. The duo enjoyed the blazing spotlight, completely oblivious to the fact that the very words they were singing would soon morph into a chilling prophecy. Just 2 short years after the song hit the airwaves, Jan Berry was driving his own sports car through the winding streets of Los Angeles when he suddenly lost control of the vehicle. The car violently slammed into a parked truck, leaving him with severe brain injuries that permanently altered the course of his life. The detail that makes everything completely terrifying? The horrific crash took place just a few blocks away from the exact Dead Man's Curve he had so passionately sung about. He miraculously survived, but the dark irony of living out his own lyrical tragedy cast a heavy shadow over the duo's career for decades. But while Jan Berry survived his terrifying encounter with fate, the man behind our next iconic track was ultimately consumed by the very darkness he created. Number 9. Telstar, The Tornadoes. This shimmering, futuristic instrumental completely took the world by storm in 1962, becoming the very first single by a British group to reach number 1 in the United States. The brilliant mind behind this extraterrestrial sound was producer Joe Meek. He was an absolute pioneer, experimenting with revolutionary studio sounds far ahead of his time, but he was also a man deeply haunted by profound paranoia and a dangerous obsession with the occult. Following the astronomical success of the track, Meek was suddenly hit by a vicious plagiarism lawsuit that immediately froze all of his royalties. The crushing financial pressure, intensely combined with his growing, delusional fears that unseen forces were constantly stealing his ideas, pushed his fragile mind to the absolute limit. His recording studio, once a vibrant hub of innovation, morphed into a dark fortress of isolation. On a fateful day in 1967, amid a highly destructive downward spiral, Meek's internal demons fully took the wheel, resulting in the tragic loss of his landlady and his own dark end. The triumphant song about outer space had ultimately dragged its creator into an impenetrable abyss, and that wasn't the only time a song title seemed to map out a terrible destiny. Number 8. 3 Steps to Heaven, Eddie Cochran. Eddie was a fiercely shining star in the early rock and roll scene, widely known for his rebel charm and highly innovative guitar playing style. In January of 1960, he stepped into the studio and recorded this incredibly poignant, acoustic-driven track, completely unaware that it would be his final time behind a microphone. During a massive tour across the United Kingdom just a few months later, Cochran, along with fellow musician Gene Vincent and songwriter Sharon Shealy, hopped into a late-night taxi to head back to London. Speeding through the dark streets, the driver suddenly blew a tire and lost control, causing the vehicle to crash violently into a solid concrete lamppost. The sheer impact of the collision severely injured the passengers, but Cochran took the brunt of the blow and could not hold on, passing away shortly after at a local hospital. He was only 21 years old. When 3 Steps to Heaven was released posthumously, it immediately skyrocketed to the number 1 spot on the charts. What was originally intended to be a sweet, romantic triumph twisted into an eerily fitting mourning anthem, almost as if Eddie had unwittingly left the world his very own script for saying goodbye. And speaking of unexplainable final acts, the next story continues to baffle private investigators and music historians to this very day. Number 7. I Fought the Law, The Bobby Fuller Four. You undoubtedly know the iconic driving chorus of this smash hit, which completely dominated the radio waves back in 1965. Bobby Fuller was widely hailed as the next Buddy Holly, radiating immense talent and raw charisma straight from Texas to national fame. However, the rebellious success of this catchy track brought about a very real, very terrifying string of misfortune. Just mere months after the song exploded onto the charts, Bobby reportedly received a highly mysterious phone call in the middle of the night. He quietly left his Los Angeles home and seemingly vanished into thin air. The very next afternoon, his lifeless body was shockingly discovered inside his mother's parked car, which had been thoroughly drenched in gasoline. The car's windows were completely rolled up, and the keys were still sitting in the ignition. Local police rapidly and controversially dismissed the entire case as a self-inflicted tragedy. But close friends and private investigators suspected something vastly more sinister. Wild rumors immediately circulated regarding deeply entrenched mob ties, ruthless music industry investors, and violent revenge. The disturbing truth behind what actually happened on that dark night was buried with him in the ground, leaving the upbeat song as a haunting, permanent memorial to a legend who was violently robbed of his time. Which brings us to another vocal legend whose final chart-topping hit concealed a deeply unsettling and highly controversial mystery. Number 6. A Change Is Gonna Come. Sam Cooke. This wasn't merely a pop hit. It was the heavy, emotional soundtrack of the entire civil rights movement, powerfully delivered by one of the absolute greatest voices of the 20th century. Sam Cooke brilliantly channeled his deep pain and soaring hope into this monumental, soul-stirring masterpiece. But shortly after its recording, Cooke's vibrant life was abruptly cut short in one of the most bizarre and shocking manners in music history. Cooke was shot and killed by the female manager of a notoriously seedy motel in Los Angeles. The official police narrative aggressively claimed that he had drunkenly broken into her office in a blind rage, partially unclothed. But the jagged pieces of this dark puzzle never seemed to fit together. Intense speculations immediately gained immense traction that the entire scene had been a carefully orchestrated setup, pointing directly to Cooke's powerful industry connections, his refusal to be controlled, and his potent activism as prime reasons he might have been targeted. The motel manager and a highly mysterious woman who was allegedly with him that night told drastically inconsistent stories, yet the entire investigation was hastily swept under the rug and closed. The brilliant man who sang so passionately about the change that was coming never actually lived to see it, falling victim to a dark, unresolved event that seemed to hopelessly curse his creative peak. And unfortunately, deep tragedy often strikes right after a masterpiece is finally completed, as we are about to see right now. Number 5. Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. Otis Redding. The incredibly melancholic, deeply relaxing tone of this absolute soul masterpiece is instantly recognized anywhere in the world. Otis originally wrote the verses while sitting on a rented houseboat in Sausalito, California, desperately searching for a fresh new direction for his music, after being profoundly inspired by the experimental sounds of the Beatles. He confidently recorded the track in early December of 1967. You know that famous, deeply moving whistle right at the very end of the track? It wasn't actually a brilliant stylistic choice at all. Otis simply forgot the final verse during the recording take and casually whistled to fill the empty space, fully intending to re-record the vocal later that week. He never got the chance. Merely 3 days after that fateful recording session, Redding's twin-engine plane tragically plummeted into the freezing, icy waters of Lake Monona in Wisconsin, instantly claiming the life of Otis and nearly every single member of his young backing band. The breathtaking song subsequently became the first posthumous single in history to reach the top of the American charts. Listening to that unpolished, unrecorded whistle today doesn't feel like a happy, breezy conclusion. It feels exactly like the voice of a ghost slowly fading into the heavy fog, a deeply haunting reminder of a brilliant life that was brutally interrupted at its exact moment of musical perfection. But the sudden weight of immense success also extracted a terrible toll during the era of free love. Number 4. Going Up the Country. Canned Heat. If the legendary Woodstock Festival possessed an unofficial theme song, it was absolutely this upbeat, driving rhythm heavily dominated by a hypnotic, unforgettable flute melody. It was the definitive track that perfectly captured the easygoing, free-spirited essence of an entire generation. The quiet genius behind the brilliant arrangement and those incredibly distinct, high-pitched falsetto vocals was guitarist and main songwriter Alan Wilson. Despite effectively becoming the face of the band's massive global success, the blinding spotlight only served to drastically deepen Wilson's immense social anxiety and crushing depression. He was a fierce, dedicated environmentalist long before the term was ever popularized, feeling deeply, painfully frustrated by humanity's ongoing destruction of nature. As the band's fame exploded, Wilson's internal agonizing pain became completely unbearable. In September of 1970, at the incredibly young age of 27, he was tragically found lifeless inside his sleeping bag in the back of a friend's yard in California, the victim of a fatal, completely non-accidental reaction. Wilson quietly, tragically inaugurated the infamous and deeply cursed 27 Club cycle of the early 1970s. The joyous song that was originally meant to wildly celebrate freedom from the big city suddenly morphed into a cruel, unyielding reminder of the invisible chains that had tightly imprisoned its creator's soul. Some curses, however, do not just target a single member, they mercilessly swallow the entire band whole. Number 3. Come and Get It. Badfinger. Imagine having your entire music career massively kickstarted by Paul McCartney himself. He personally wrote and produced this massive, irresistible pop hit for Badfinger in 1969, instantly ensuring that they would become the absolute next big sensation on the Beatles' own Apple Records label. It genuinely felt like the ultimate musical blessing, the absolute luckiest beginning any aspiring group could ever dream of. Instead, it forcefully marked the beginning of one of the most brutal, heart-wrenching, and cursed descents in the history of the entertainment industry. The song's explosive, worldwide success immediately attracted deeply unscrupulous predatory business managers who ruthlessly exploited the young, naive band. Despite repeatedly releasing global smash hits and selling millions of records across the world, the band members were constantly left with completely empty pockets due to incredibly shady contracts and violently drained financial funds. The crushing financial despair and absolute hopelessness fully consumed the band's brilliant creative genius, Pete Ham, who simply could not bear the heavy weight of the industry's betrayal and tragically took his own life in 1975. 8 painful years later, fellow band member Tom Evans, completely unable to escape the constant, draining lawsuits and the ongoing, miserable poverty, heartbreakingly followed the exact same dark path. The golden gift of a massive, career-defining hit song had completely twisted into the very trap that violently destroyed their lives. And that certainly wasn't the only time a direct link to the Beatles seemed to attract deeply dark, destructive energy. Number 2. Helter, Skelter. The Beatles. When Paul McCartney casually read a magazine interview where The Who claimed they had just made the loudest, most aggressive, and dirtiest rock song ever recorded, he immediately accepted the challenge. The resulting track was an absolute chaotic masterpiece of blistering hard rock, placed right on the legendary White Album. It was purely intended to be a wildly fun, incredibly loud, and dirty sonic roller coaster ride about an amusement park slide. But deep in the boiling shadows of Los Angeles, a deeply disturbed, manipulative cult leader named Charles Manson heard something entirely different. He viciously twisted the song's blistering aggression into a highly delusional, terrifying message, boldly claiming to his followers that the track was an apocalyptic signal of an impending, violent race war. Manson heavily weaponized the aggressive chords in the title of the track to brainwash his young followers, directly driving them to commit one of the most brutal, shocking, and notorious crime sprees in American history during the sweltering summer of 1969. The words Helter, Skelter were even horrifyingly painted in blood at the dark crime scenes. The Beatles were completely and utterly horrified. Their innocent expression of loud musical freedom had been permanently, irreversibly stained by pure, unadulterated evil. The track was swiftly banned from countless radio stations and instantly acquired an undeniable, heavy aura of dread and historical tragedy. And if you think the energy of that specific era couldn't possibly get any darker, our final track literally, brutally marked the absolute end of the 1960s peace movement. Number 1. Gimme Shelter, The Rolling Stones. This is not just a standard rock song, it is the terrifying, atmospheric sound of the apocalyptic storm that forcefully closed out the entire decade. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards masterfully crafted a track heavily drenched in the deep paranoia of the Cold War, the Vietnam War, and rising civil unrest. But the heavy curse surrounding the song struck much closer to home in the recording booth. To forcefully provide the haunting, wailing background vocals needed for the chorus, pregnant gospel singer Mary Clayton was suddenly called out of her bed in the middle of the night, famously arriving at the recording studio wearing her silk pajamas and hair rollers. She belted out the dark lyrics with such raw, staggering intensity that her powerful voice actually cracked on the recording, leaving the Stones staring in absolute stunned awe. Tragically, pushing her body to that level of extreme physical strain and channeling that intensely dark emotional energy exacted a crushing, devastating toll. Just a few short days after leaving that legendary studio session, Mary Clayton suffered a deeply painful, tragic miscarriage. She would later heartbreakingly admit that it took her many years before she could ever bear to listen to the hit track again, without being entirely consumed by overwhelming grief and sorrow. The incredibly dark curse of the track also brutally spilled out onto the live stages shortly after its creation. The very name of the band's massive tour that year quickly became heavily synonymous with unmitigated tragedy when, during the infamous, poorly planned Altamont Free Festival in late 1969, horrific violence relentlessly erupted in the massive crowd, and a young fan violently lost his life right in front of the stage while the band helplessly played on. Gimme Shelter was seemingly destined to violently foresee the crashing downfall of the peaceful, loving ideals of the 1960s, leaving only broken hearts, shattered dreams, and chaotic destruction strictly in its wake. Global fame and massive chart-topping hits very often come beautifully wrapped in shining golden cellophane. But the harsh, unforgiving realities behind the studio doors clearly show us just how deeply ruthless, dangerous, and cursed this glamorous world can truly be. These 10 incredibly iconic songs might have completely defined a beautiful era, but they brutally extracted a heavy, dark tax on the fragile lives of the very individuals who made them immortal in the first place. It serves as a highly chilling, ever-present reminder that behind every great, enduring work of art, there frequently lies a heavy, invisible sacrifice that the public never gets to see. If these deeply shocking stories completely surprised you, and you want to dive even deeper into the hidden, shadowy side of pop culture and the greatest, darkest mysteries of the music industry, fiercely smash that subscribe button and leave a like on this video right now. Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Which of these obscure, cursed behind-the-scenes stories absolutely shocked you the most? Keep your mind wide open, stay incredibly safe out there, and we will definitely see you next time.